Cool.
All right. Hello, travelers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident global citizens. My name is Tim, and as part of Reach the World's efforts to support educators and families during the COVID-19 epidemic, we're sharing free live stream discussions with some of our standout travelers from recent years. You can find an updated calendar of live stream events and much more at athome.reachtheworld.org. Today, I'm excited to be connecting with Fulbright Scholar Jeffrey Thiele, who's calling in from San Salvador, El Salvador. Jeffrey has shared his experiences in El Salvador with a few classrooms over the past year, inspiring students to learn more about Central America. And if they're very, very lucky, they got to hear Jeffrey play his saxophone as well, and maybe we will today. If you haven't already read Jeffrey's virtual exchange articles from San Salvador, I'd highly recommend you check them out. We'll put a link to his journey homepage in the YouTube chat sidebar. Also, please use the chat sidebar to let us know you're here and share any questions you might have for Jeffrey as we go along. We'll get to as many of them as we can. So that said, let's go on a journey to El Salvador. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How's it going?
It's good, just here in the apartment in quarantine, just the usual day-to-day thing. Doing what I can to stay safe.
Awesome. Well, I feel lucky that we can connect with you today, and thanks for joining us. I really want to get into, you've had a really sort of unique global journey, and I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about it today.
Yeah, for sure. I guess my global journey started, global journey of having left home for real, because I went to other international locations before actually leaving home, but first time I left home was going to London in the UK to go study for a master's program. I was lucky enough to get a fellowship from my University of Michigan to go study. It was meant for an engineering student to go study the humanities, and I studied a master's at University College London. Basically, right as I got to London, I applied for Fulbright as well, because I wanted to have it, because with the Fulbright you have to have basically plan a year in advance to apply for everything. And whilst I was in London, I got the master's. It was a master's degree in philosophy, but while I was studying that, I was also getting back into music. I had someone convinced me to basically bring my saxophone to London, and I was like, okay. It was actually a coffee shop regular of the coffee shop that I worked at, and he somehow caught this edge that I had, or this internal kind of passion for music that I didn't even realize that I had still. And he's like, you had to take your saxophone to London, and I was like, okay, I'll take it to London. And I took it to London, and actually ended up falling back in love with music, because previously I had dropped out of the School of Music while studying engineering, and I kind of came back into music playing jazz with the Jazz Society at the university, and they kind of gave me the space to rediscover myself as a musician. So I spent all the time in London, and it was a great time, and I ended up getting the Fulbright and decided, I was like, well, I had to take this. It's despite falling in love with London, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to El Salvador and take my saxophone with me as well, because I knew that I was like, that's basically after spending time in London, I told myself, I was like, okay, it's mandatory that you take your saxophone wherever you go, and just because it became so important to me. And
what was the focus of your Fulbright research in El Salvador? What did you get your Fulbright grant for?
So I was basically going along the same strain of work that I had always been doing, which is combining engineering and social topics, I guess. So because I majored in biomedical engineering and then got the degree in philosophy, philosophy, politics, and economics of health, and I wanted to use that to combine into social rights, or human rights and social justice. So the topic in El Salvador was, I proposed to study internal migration, or basically the healthcare access for internal migrants who have been displaced in El Salvador due to the violence in El Salvador. So yeah, just basically studying that, studying like the response to internal migration in the
All
health.
right, and you did that for a full year, is that right?
Yeah, 10 months. Yeah, I did that for, yeah, it was from October through July, August-ish. So.
Do you want to share your screen and show us some of the photos you put together? I know you've got some photos to share of your time.
Yeah, for sure. I probably have like way too many photos, but I'm gonna try and like share the ones that have stories behind them. But yeah, here, can you see the screen? Is it all?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, cool. I'll go to the beginning. So basically, I just wanted to put, I basically just put a little, like this slideshow together like chronologically, but I'll just keep going through, and if questions pop out, they can, we can pause and whatnot.
Sounds
so
good.
Just feel free to interrupt me. But I don't know if many people know, but I'm like a lover of cats. I actually don't live with a cat right now, but these are the two cats that I used to live with. This is the first house that I lived in El Salvador. The one on the left is called Rugido, and the one in the picture on the right on the left is called Sofrito. They're adorable cats. But let's see if I can do. Oh yeah. So this is at a beach called El Sonte, which is like basically I had a good friend who took me, who kind of like, I didn't have a car at the time, so I had some friends who offered to take me to a lot of the places in El Salvador. Because El Salvador is pretty small. It's like it takes about like 45 minutes to get to the beach or to the mountains, and it takes about 4 hours to drive across the entire country. So they took me down to El Sonte, and like the sunsets on this beach in particular are just really beautiful. And the picture on the left is basically like in this little crevice thing that isn't always accessible because of the tide, but it's a fun place to go. So these pictures, this is in the west part of the country. On the left side, it's the western part of the country. On the right side, it's in the kind of eastern central part of the country. On the left, this is a picture of me in a labyrinth in this place called La Paneca, which is like in the mountainy, the west side of the country is more mountainous and like higher elevation. And it's my favorite part of the country because it's a lot colder and like fresh. And they built this labyrinth, and it's fun to do that. And this same friend took me to this labyrinth, and we had a nice time there. It's in this road called La Ruta de las Flores, which is basically a route that takes you to a lot of the main coffee growing regions, and they're kind of like touristy areas, but it's really nice to like spend time in that area of the country. On the right is Suchitoto, which was, fun fact, like the capital of El Salvador for like 3 days. And it's actually like Spanish themed. Like it's a lot of the architecture is very Spanish in comparison to the rest of the country. And I got to visit this place, Suchitoto, before I actually came here on the grant. On a little trip to El Salvador to kind of learn about Salvadoran culture. And this is in the main town square. And that's like one of the church that is in the town square. But Suchitoto is like really cool because it's like an up and coming little town that a lot of people are kind of developing for tourism, and it's really cute, and it's a really nice place. It just like gets really, really hot. So it's like, that's the only downside. This is in a place called Conchagua, it's a volcano, pretty dormant volcano on the very most eastern point of the country. And it's got a bay like that you can look out over. And we went camping on the top of this volcano, and woke up to watch the sunrise. So these pictures aren't the best, but like you basically see that like this is nighttime, but you can see the sun. You literally watch the sunrise like over the ocean, and it's like the perfect, because like you can't get any better than that from like the perspective of a volcano, like down to the ocean. Like you literally see the first rays of sunlight. So this is like the progression of the sun coming up, and you can still see the stars, but like, I don't know, it's just absolutely beautiful. Like, and then this is like during the full daytime. So I didn't really get the progression like that well, but but it was really beautiful, and it was really fun camping, and it was actually really cold too at night, which I appreciated because I'm a fan of the cold. And then this is the second cat that I lived with, named Robin. And then actually, so this is when I started to like play. This is around like December time, I think, or November, December, when I started to play music. and like kind of connect with local musicians. So this is like on the left is a gig from with this guitarist named Jose, who now lives in Costa Rica. And then on the right is the Santa Ana Cathedral, which is it's like the biggest city in the west side of the country. And on the side of like next to the Santa Ana Cathedral is where I played my first gig with this band called the Zamora Brothers, which is like a classic jazz band here in El Salvador. And that we played at this like pizza place called Simmer Down. And then this is like, so on the right, the picture on the right is in Santa Ana as well. And that's when we started playing. We played a gig it's like the Santa Ana Theater, the National Theater in Santa Ana. And it was the same band, Salvador Brothers. That gig only had like 6 people in it, but it was still really fun to play. On the left is where the pop funk band that I'm a part of, Camelo, used to rehearse. So we like got to rehearse and like watch the sunset like all the time, like every Sunday from that point. It's like our drummer's family has a coffee farm in this area called Huizucar, or it's close to Huizucar, and it's just like absolutely beautiful, really nice, also cold.
If I can interrupt you for a second, I love the way that you came to El Salvador to do your important Fulbright research and work on human rights issues, and along the way sort of connected with the country and the culture in an unexpected way. Can you, I mean, we're definitely going to have you back. There's so much more to this story. We'll connect with you again and get into some of your other Central American adventures, maybe like in a couple weeks again. But I wanted to really focus on what sort of unexpected path you took when your Fulbright grant came to an end. Like what sort of kept you in El Salvador?
Oh yeah. So it's like the super unexpected pathway, but basically El Salvador. So I kind of found myself really connecting with the musical culture here, and the music scene, but not like the traditional, like what you'd think of music coming from El Salvador as like cumbia or salsa or stuff like that. But there's a lot of like the new like indie scene and up and coming bands. Because basically in January, February, I was asked to join this band called Camelo as this pop funk band. And at the time I thought I was going to be just basically doing, I thought I was going to be in the band for 10 months, or, I guess the remainder of my time, and then go and do like a doctorate, like, and following the research that I was doing, like do a doctorate in London or something like that, and continue on with my professional career. But then Camelo was like making plans like into 2020, 2021. And I'm like, oh man, like, I feel like, I don't know. I just felt like this, not an obligation, but I felt this like internal desire to like stay with the band and like stay playing music. And at the time, like someone had actually called me to do like a modeling gig. And I had other people, like this owner of a local cafe called Overdose Coffee wanted to start jazz nights, and he asked me to be like the curator of the jazz nights. And I was like, yeah, like for sure. And then from that like was born like my jazz project that is now like a pretty good force in the jazz scene. And then from there, like I started a jazz duo, an electronic. I co-founded like a DJ saxophone duo with a local DJ here. And I don't know, like basically like all these things are just to say that I connected so deeply with the art scene in El Salvador that I decided to like break the professional pathway and go like down this arts pathway that I never really thought I was going to do. But after doing it, it felt so good and so like correct and right that El Salvador is giving me that path or that opportunity to kind of like develop myself as an artist whilst living from it as well.
That's so cool. I know last time we talked, this opportunity and your tour with the band had taken you to countries around Central America as well.
Yeah, actually, Camelo. Yeah, we about like a month after I joined, we went to a festival, as the Empire Music Festival in Guatemala, which is like the biggest music festival in Guatemala. And they actually asked me to go to Honduras like a couple of weeks before that, but I had like made plans and I was like, no, I can't do that. But looking back, I was like, I should have gone to Honduras. But and then we went on tour in Mexico. In this past November, we went on our first tour to Mexico City. We're probably going to go to Costa Rica. We're probably going to be going to Peru at some point. Probably to Honduras again, and and we're actually going back to Mexico soon as well. So
that's fantastic. How amazing. I know over the course of your virtual exchange with a couple different Reach the World classrooms, you got a lot of kids who had connections to Central America, especially really excited about your journey and what you were doing. And some of those kids are on the call today or are following through their live stream, including some students from Ms. Schmill's class who are asking if you could tell us a little bit more about your interaction with the people in the community.
Okay, I'll talk about like actually, in what sense? Like the musician community or like the artist community or other?
Well, I'm maybe they can clarify in the comments if they have a specific interest, but my interpretation is that you've had a chance to really stay and integrate within the San Salvador local community really well in kind of a unique way. And how do you feel about, I mean, I'm assuming you speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, you have like close personal friendships and you're like basically have adapted this culture for your living right now. What is that like? What does that look like on a daily basis for you if it weren't quarantine situation?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Like, I guess like on a daily basis, I'm either like practicing or at a rehearsal or at like a modeling gig, like, and it's interesting, like the people that I've connected with are mostly all artists. They're not like I used to be with the NGO community and like who are like intermixing with a lot of like international people, but like I really didn't identify that much with that community.
Okay.
So normally now it's like kind of, I don't know, I would think of it like as connecting with the people. It's not the same, but like if you're in like New York in the 20s and like there's this like vibrant artist community of like people who aren't living like traditional lifestyles, who don't work 9-to-5 jobs, like so we're all kind of like, I don't know, and like periodically I kind of like I have friends who will contact me and say like, hey, I'm like looking into doing this like weird modeling gig if you want to be a model for this. Like it's not paid, but like it's really artistic and like I don't know. So I've connected deeply with like that community that like really kind of understands the idea of living like out of the system in a way that, but it's interesting because like we're all kind of also dealing with like, I don't know, like it's hard to say because like the artist community isn't like, it's well supported enough to like that people can actually live on the arts, but at the same time, like there are like the normal struggles of like people having to find ways to like make money and like find ways to like live well as an artist in El Salvador and kind of like having to constantly like justify their lifestyle to a lot of other people in El Salvador. Cause like sometimes a lot of musicians say like, oh, nobody can live from music. It's like terrible. But then it's like the same musicians who are saying that they can't live from music. So then people hear musicians saying that. And so it's like the same struggles that I think musicians go through in the United States as well. But like, I don't know, it's just like, I've kind of identified with that, like of kind of like joining the struggle of like saying like, no, like we're musicians, we can live, and we're artists and we can live from art. And like, and it's a similar, it's a similar like international kind of like vibe with the local community. I don't know.
I want to, I totally get it. I want to make sure to leave enough time for you to play us something too, but there's a couple more questions I want to get to as well.
Yeah,
lots of questions for you today. I think there's a lot of young people, especially, who are interested in going on these global adventures and chasing their passions around the world and just sort of following similar footsteps as yours. What advice would you give to someone who is interested in becoming a Fulbright scholar or is interested in living a life as integrated into a community in a different country as you are?
Okay. Basically, okay. So there's a lot of, when you're a Fulbright scholar, there's a lot of like imposter syndrome. as far as like thinking of thinking that you're not like really meant to be doing a certain thing. And I think like it's easy to live with imposter syndrome if you're doing something that you genuinely love. But I think with my Fulbright, it was kind of like I wasn't quite balanced correctly. And I think the imposter syndrome had a little bit of truth, where it was like, are you really like fully a human rights researcher, or do you have like a passion for human rights yet you're an artist at heart? Like I didn't really realize that until I could really like open myself up to being a more genuine self. And I think being abroad really helps you it really makes you vulnerable. And as long as you're like open to that vulnerability with your own self and understanding like how you can be the most genuine self, will get you like the best experience, like personal experience doing what you want. Right.
Sure.
And I think like people kind of worry too much about like what is the most practical and what's not, like what's going to make you the most money, what's not. But like if you're really honestly doing something that you genuinely love, like people will notice that genuine nature, and you'll like, I don't know, I'm a firm believer that the universe kind of like starts compensating for people who are like doing something that they like really genuinely are meant to do. And so I just be genuine and be vulnerable.
I feel like I've known you long enough to know that there was going to be a very philosophical answer to that question.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
From a very like pragmatic standpoint, I'm curious, when did you start learning Spanish, or when did you start incorporating some of these aspects that have led you to, living outside of the country?
So my first true like international experience was like I went to the Dominican Republic for like 5 weeks when I was a sophomore. No. Yeah, when I was a sophomore in undergrad. So how old would I have been? 20, more or less. And I took a Spanish class right before going on that like internship. It was like an internship for like community health. And I hadn't had like any Spanish experience, and I took like the basic like 8-month like rapid like let's just like get whatever Spanish we can under our belt, and then went to Dominican Republic to kind of build on that. And then that was, so how many years ago? That would have been 5 years ago. And then I didn't take any Spanish until I then went to London. So like then 3 years later, and took another course that was like a night course. It was like 2 hours a week. So, and then that was all the theoretical experience I had in Spanish. And then coming to El Salvador, I could not speak the language that well. Like I could, but like it wasn't like, I was not, like I wasn't comfortable like going out on a date or something, because it was like nobody would actually come to like realize who I was because I couldn't hold up that good of a conversation.
Okay.
And then it was just practical experience from there. But I had to have that like theoretical base. If that
Sure.
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many questions for you. They just keep rolling in. I think you just have a lot of fans.
Okay.
Let me do a couple more, and then I want to give you a chance to play something for us.
Okay.
When you're sort of moving around, I think this might be a perfect segue into letting you play. Is there anything that you can't travel without?
Oh, well, the saxophone, of course. I have to take the saxophone with me, like my saxophone. So.
Awesome. You wanna play us something?
Yeah, sure. I'll just do like an improvisation of some sort. That's kind of like been a vibe that I've been doing. I'm gonna actually close the windows too because of the neighbors. Basically, like I've been doing a lot of like energetic, like basically like just improvising what I feel, and people have like kind of really taken to it. So I'm gonna do that. I know like sometimes people want me to like play like known stuff or stuff that's like pretty like standard, but I think the improvisations are more fun. So I'm just gonna do that.
Give us like 2 or 3 minutes if you would, please.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I will. I'll set a timer as well, just to be sure. Keep myself accountable.
I know that's probably a soul-crushing demand for an improv session.
No, it's fine. It's okay. Okay, so I don't know where exactly to put the computer, but I'll put it right here. Okay. I got my alto today, just FYI. But yeah, so timer is going. Okay. All good? Can you hear it well?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. That's amazing.
For sure.
We have a lot of questions now about how long again you've been playing, because
Yeah.
lots of big fans in the chat.
Oh, good. I've been playing for 13 years, saxophone.
Yeah.
But like seriously, like jazz, I haven't actually, like improvisation and jazz and stuff, not since like 4 or 5 years ago, because I was like a big classical saxophonist. So I was doing a lot of stuff like classical competitions and whatnot, which gave me a good command of the horn. But it didn't give me a good command of like how to improvise. And I actually just recently started taking saxophone lessons again.
All right, good for you.
Actually, learn jazz and actually learn jazz formally. So
awesome. Well, I could talk to you all day, and I certainly could listen to that music all day, and we'll definitely have you back in a couple weeks so we can do this again. But I'd like to give sort of a final question to our live stream participants. When all of the COVID-19 pandemic is gone and we're free to move about the country again, what's your next adventure? Where are you gonna go?
So actually, I'm thinking of spending a little bit more time in Mexico City.
Right.
So I'm really like my roots are right now are in San Salvador, but I'm feeling like this like need and energy pull towards this Mexico City. With the art, like with modeling and with music, both. Like I've got like connections there who want to like kind of connect with me with both art mediums, and the jazz scene is really strong in Mexico City, and when I was there I kind of fell in love with the city, and Mexico City I think is the next little bit of the next adventure. So
awesome. That sounds fantastic.
Okay.
Well, that half an hour has gone by so fast. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I want to just, before we go, say thanks to our entire YouTube live stream audience for joining us today. Great active chat going on. I hope you, Jeffrey, get a chance to see it after the fact. Lots of compliments on your playing. I hope everyone is definitely invited to join us again tomorrow, 2:00 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be connecting with another incredible Fulbright scholar, Katja Zinn, who's going to be telling us about the loneliest words in the world, those words that only exist in one language. So you can find a complete list of upcoming Reach the World livestream events at home.reachtheworld.org. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tim.